Historic Hungary, the lands of St. Stephen's Crown, extended over the entire central Danubian basin. This area is surrounded by the Carpathian Mountains to the north, east, and south, and the Austrian and Dinaric Alps to the west and southwest. Mountains further divide the region into three sub-basins: the Little Plain of northwest Hungary, the Great Plain, and Transylvania. The region extending from the right bank of the Danube to the foothills of the Austrian Alps is known as Transdanubia, the land beyond the Danube. Its varied terrain ranges from rolling hills in the south to uplands in the north. In the very center lies the largest body of water in Central Europe, Lake Balaton, the Hungarian Sea. In stark contrast, the Great Plain stretching east of the Danube is an open, featureless expanse. It is a prairie land identical to the vast Russian steppes on the other side of the Carpathians. The Great Plain is traversed by the twisting course of the Tisa River. Looming over the Great Plain are the northern uplands, whose slopes and valleys are covered with oak, beech, and pine forests. These mountains reach their greatest height in the Tatra Range, in present-day Slovakia. Equally picturesque are the Transylvanian Alps, which rim the southern edge of the Great Plain. The Carpathian Basin has been continuously inhabited since Paleolithic times. In the course of its history, it has witnessed the settlement and migration of an endless succession of peoples. Objects dating from the Bronze Age reveal a thriving local culture, distinguished by perfect craftsmanship. The use of iron was introduced by the Celts, who flourished in the 2nd century BC. Their silver drachmas show the influence of Greek culture in the region. At the beginning of our era, the Romans conquered Transdanubia and Transylvania, which became the provinces of Pannonia and Dacia. Behind the natural defense line of the Danube, the first urban settlements were founded by the legions guarding the empire's northern boundary. Aquincum, the administrative center of Roman Pannonia, was located in the vicinity of present-day Budapest. Excavations reveal the foundations of a civilian town with private homes, columned courtyards, forums, public baths, temples and assembly halls with frescoes and mosaics. A water organ is the most unique find to be unearthed and, like the nearby amphitheater, is further evidence of a once flourishing Roman province. The stoic faces of the people who built these Pannonian towns are revealed to us in the monuments they left of themselves. Roman civilization in the region was swept away at the beginning of the 5th century by barbarian invasions. In the middle of the 5th century, the basin was occupied by the Huns, led by their mighty king Attila. Another warlike people from Central Asia, the Avars, dominated the region for 2.5 centuries, until their empire was shattered by Charlemagne around 800 AD. The age of the great migrations was brought to a close with the arrival of the last wave of nomadic horsemen from the east, the Hungarians. The ancient homeland of the Hungarians was probably in the region of the Ural Mountains. Linguistic evidence reveals that Hungarian belongs to the Finno-Ugrian group of languages. Around 2000 BC, the Finno-Ugrian people separated. The Finnish branch eventually migrated to the shores of the Baltic, while the Ugrian branch spread from the southeastern slopes of the Ural Mountains to the river valleys of western Siberia. The Ob River Valley is still inhabited by the closest linguistic relatives of the Hungarians, the Osztjaks and Vogels. Small in number, these Ob-Ugrians lived from time immemorial by fishing and hunting. Their implements provide a clue to the primitive existence of the ancestors of the Hungarians. The geometric designs which decorated their baskets and other household artifacts often took the form of water birds. The wild duck was especially revered as a sacred animal. In Finno-Ugrian mythology, the world was created from a duck's egg. The magic powers of the shaman, who communicated with the world of the spirits, were venerated by the Ugrian peoples. Drums accompanied the shaman's incantations and tales. Like their Finno-Ugrian language, the Hungarians' folk music also bears the imprint of Eurasian origins. At some time between 500 BC and 500 AD, the ancestors of the Hungarians left the wooded plains of their Ugrian homeland and moved across the Urals to the east bank of the Volga. Long before this, they had come into contact with various Iranian and Turkic peoples, from whom they learned advanced agricultural techniques, especially livestock raising. Their primary occupation consisted of herding on rich grasslands. Above all, they became a nation of horsemen, a way of life still practiced by the Altaic peoples of Inner Asia. The world of the steppe nomad is exquisitely depicted in the gold treasures of the Scythians. Scythian weapons like the curved reflex bow were adopted by the ancient Hungarians living on the Black Sea plains. A warrior class came into being, headed by chieftains. Adopting Turkic social structures, Hungarian clans were organized into military tribes. For several centuries, they belonged to the Onogur tribal alliance ruled by the Khazars. Onogur is the source of the names under which the Hungarians subsequently became known to the outside world. The name Magyar, however, was how 7 tribes called themselves when they broke away from the Khazar Empire and moved to the Don Valley region after 830 AD. Arabic sources provide the first historical description of the Magyars' dwelling place along the Black Sea. They have tents and march together with the shooting grass and the green vegetation. Under pressure from attacks by another steppe nomad people, the Pechenegs, the 7 Hungarian tribes continued their westward trek, reaching the area between the Dnieper and lower Danube in the second half of the 9th century. In the last stage of their westward migration, the Magyars found a final homeland in the Carpathian Basin. According to tradition, the chieftains of the 7 Hungarian tribes elected the most powerful of their number, Árpád, as Gyula, or chief commander, to lead the conquest. Crossing the Carpathian Mountains through the Veretska Pass in 895, Árpád's army swiftly occupied the sparsely populated plain, and then the territory north and west of the Danube inhabited by Slavs. 10th century graves of Magyar chieftains and their followers reveal the magnificence of the steppes, which they brought to their new home. Even death could not separate the Magyar chieftain from his horse. Beside him were placed his silver-studded saber, bow and arrows, his quiver and other belongings. The gilded metal covering of his purse was engraved with palm leaf designs of Persian origin. His belt mounts, like the jewelry of his wife, show the Magyar's lasting appreciation of the goldsmith's art. Another lady's adornment, a hair disc, depicts the Árpád's legendary ancestor, the eagle-like Ural bird. Accustomed to life in the saddle, Hungarian riders used stirrups, an invention of the steppe nomads. These enabled them to use their favorite weapon, the bow and arrow, from horseback. Using their newly acquired Carpathian homeland as a base, wave after wave of fierce war parties swept across Europe in the first half of the 10th century. In an age of invasions, the enfeebled continent was pillaged by the raids of Arabs, Vikings, and Normans. The lightning attacks of the fleet Hungarian horsemen completely overwhelmed their slow-moving, heavily armored opponents. From the arrows of the Magyars, save us, O Lord, prayed terrified Christians in churches across Europe. The marauding expeditions of Hungarian bands were finally brought to a halt by a reorganized army of German knights at the Battle of Lechfeld near Augsburg in 955, when Emperor Otto routed the forces of the Magyar warlord Bulcsú the Bloody. As a warning, Otto had Bulcsú and his fellow chieftain Lehel hanged. A few Magyar attacks on Byzantium were the only ones to follow this devastating defeat. And when Magyar horsemen were vanquished under the walls of Constantinople, the era of Hungarian raids came to an end. The exploits of the Age of Adventures were preserved in legends surrounding Lehel's magic horn. Faced with the growing strength of the Holy Roman Empire of the Germans along its western frontiers and the Byzantine Empire to the southeast, it was imperative that the pagan Magyars place their relationship with the kingdoms of Europe on a different footing. Under the leadership of Prince Géza, the foundations of a Christian kingdom were laid. The Magyars began to give up their old way of life, turning from a semi-nomadic to a settled agrarian society. The symbol of this new era became a Romanesque basilica amidst cultivated fields. To secure the Magyars' place in the community of Christian nations, it was necessary to choose between the Eastern and Western churches. In the competition to convert the pagan peoples of Eastern Europe, Byzantine missionaries had brought the Greek Orthodox faith to Bulgarians, Serbs, Russians, and Romanians. The Roman Catholic faith was brought to Slovenes, Croats, Moravians, Czechs, and Poles. With his country poised between East and West, Prince Géza's choice carried enormous consequences for the future. Byzantine influence had already spread to the south, where Géza's rival, the Jula of Transylvania, was converted to the Orthodox rite. In 973, Géza requested missionaries from the Holy Roman Empire to convert his people to Christianity. Perhaps the central figure in the country's conversion was Saint Adalbert, Bishop of Prague, whose influence over Géza's son Stephen left a lasting mark. To strengthen his alliance with Bavaria, Géza married his son and heir to German Princess Gisela shortly before his death. A coronation robe, made in Stephen's lifetime, offers the only contemporary portrait of the royal couple. At the beginning of his rule, Stephen found himself faced with vigorous domestic resistance. Hungarian tribal chiefs, who clung to paganism and the old order, supported the succession of the eldest member of the Árpád dynasty, Koppány. With the help of German knights who accompanied Gisela, Stephen defeated his ambitious kinsman, whose body was then cut into pieces and nailed to the gates of 3 castles as a warning to his opponents. Double-edged swords of the Western type found in Hungary at this time attest to the new method of fighting employed by the soldiers recruited by Prince Géza and Stephen to maintain their rule. Having consolidated his power, Stephen had himself crowned as the first king of Hungary, with a royal crown obtained from Pope Sylvester II. According to later sources, the coronation took place on New Year's Day of the year 1001. Although the original crown has not survived, a later crown from the 11th and 12th centuries has been venerated as the Holy Crown of St. Stephen. The lower Greek crown bears the enameled image of a Byzantine emperor and Hungarian king in the company of saints and archangels, while the upper Latin crown pictures the apostles. On both crowns, Christ is represented as the ruler of the universe. Fused together in a unique synthesis, the upper and lower crowns are, as it were, emblematic of Hungary's connection with Byzantium and Rome, with East and West. The authority granted to Stephen by the Pope to establish a national church was of crucial significance in securing his kingdom's independence from German control. King Stephen now moved to bring all the Hungarian tribes and clans under his rule. The Dula of Transylvania lost his autonomy and was forced to submit to the king. A unified kingdom was now firmly established. Continuing the work begun by his father, Stephen organized the separate territories ruled by tribal chieftains into counties, administered by royal governors known as Ispans. The Ispans were installed in the castles of the old clan chiefs. They collected taxes in the king's name, sat in judgment, and organized the armed forces at royal command. Of all Stephen's undertakings, he considered the conversion of his people the most important. Soldiers were sent to drive the people to mass christenings. Missionaries were called in from abroad. The king ordered every 10 villages to build a church and support its priest. Other royal edicts compelled his subjects to attend services regularly and pay tithes. Bishoprics and 2 archbishoprics, Esztergom and Kolocha, were set up and endowed with enormous tracts of land. The first monastery in Hungary, Pannonhalma Abbey, was granted a charter by Stephen in 1001. Like other Benedictine monasteries, it became an important seat of learning. The Christian culture, spread by foreign monks such as Bishop Gerard or Gellert, played a crucial role in the development of state and society. Stephen's son and heir, Imre, was entrusted to the care of the learned Gellert, a noted ecclesiastical writer of his time. The advantages of a multicultural kingdom were noted in St. Stephen's admonitions to his son. For as guests and newcomers arrive from different parts and provinces, so they bring with them different tongues and customs, different examples, and all this enhances the country. For a country of one language and one custom is weak and fallible. In the last years of his reign, the great king's work was endangered by the untimely death of his only son in a hunting accident. Vasil, the last male descendant of Árpád and a pagan, was blinded to prevent him from asserting his claim to the throne. Vasil's sons fled the country, and Stephen named his sister's son as his successor. After a reign of 40 years, Hungary's first and most revered king died in 1038. He was laid to rest in the royal capital of Fehérvár. A stone coffin carved from a Roman sarcophagus is thought to be his. Only a garden of ruins now marks the site of the magnificent cathedral, where once Hungarian kings were crowned and buried. The new Christian kingdom established by St. Stephen placed considerable burdens on the lower classes. Large numbers of freemen were increasingly subjected to dependency, bound to perpetual service on the estates of ishpans, magnates, bishops, and abbots. St. Stephen's successors faced violent pagan uprisings. Among the victims was Bishop Gellert. By one account, he was nailed in a barrel and plunged from a steep rocky hill, which now bears his name. Terrified by the specter of a violent popular movement, the great lords turned to the sons of the blinded Vasil to re-establish order. Struggles for the throne and internal strife plagued the young Hungarian state, which had to resist expansionist pressure from the German Empire. The kingdom was stabilized under the rule of Lászlo I, who became, together with St. Stephen, the most venerated king of the Árpád house. An outstanding military leader, László inaugurated a policy of southward expansion. In 1091, he assumed the vacant throne of Croatia, beginning an association between the two kingdoms that was to last 800 years. While the annexation of the rich Dalmatian towns by László's successor secured an outlet to the Adriatic Sea for Hungary, it involved the country in a long struggle with Venice. A more immediate threat to the kingdom was posed by the raids of the Pechenegs and Cumans. László's campaigns against these nomads were enshrined in one of medieval Hungary's most popular legends, his combat with a Cuman warrior who tried to abduct a Hungarian maiden. Engravings, illuminations, and countless frescoes painted in churches from Upper Hungary to Transylvania recounted the king's deed of valor. For centuries afterwards, László remained the ideal of a Christian knight. The devout king was also remembered as a powerful protector and generous patron of the church. The authority of the dynasty and church was enhanced when László obtained the canonization of Stephen, his son Imre, and Gellert. During the canonization ceremonies, Stephen's right hand was removed from his grave and preserved as a holy relic. Later, László himself was proclaimed a saint. László was succeeded on the throne by Kalman, the book lover, who completed the organization of the early kingdom. Moderating the severity of the penal codes issued by Stephen and László, Kalman proved an excellent administrator and lawgiver. A contemporary Polish chronicler noted that, of all the kings of his time, Kalman was the most cultured in the discipline of letters. While ecclesiastical manuscripts in Latin predominated, a funeral oration from the turn of the 13th century marks the first appearance of Hungarian in a literary text. Around the same time, an anonymous notary, Master P, recorded the age of the Magyar Conquest in the style of a French geste. Italian and French influence also inspired poetry in stone. The magnificent Romanesque churches erected in the 12th and 13th centuries. Sculptural details reveal how styles originating in the West acquired native features. Such cultural contacts bear witness to Hungary's integration into Latin Christendom. Cistercian monks and foreign settlers introduced more intensive methods of cultivation, which in turn promoted the growth of trade and crafts. By the reign of Béla III in the late 12th century, rapid economic development made Hungary the leading power of southeastern Europe. The king's vast revenues from silver mines, the minting of coins, and taxes ranked him among the world's richest monarchs. Following his marriage to a French princess, Béla invited Burgundian architects to rebuild the royal palace and chapel at Esztergom in the new Gothic style. Here, Béla received in regal fashion German Emperor Frederick Barbarossa, leader of the Third Crusade, who passed through Hungary on his way to the Holy Land. Expanding relations with the West were counterbalanced by Béla's close ties to Byzantium and the Russian principalities. Brought up in the Byzantine imperial court as heir to the throne, Béla adroitly used his eastern contacts to safeguard Hungary's sovereignty in the face of expanding Byzantine influence. During his reign, a Byzantine imperial symbol, the episcopal cross, became part of the Hungarian coat of arms. The mysterious crown of Monomachos, and the filigreed shaft of the royal scepter are other reminders of Byzantine-Magyar relations. The splendor and magnificence of Béla's court marked the zenith of royal power in Árpád, Hungary. The patrimonial kingship established by St. Stephen rested on a system of royal estates and counties administered by the king's officials. By the 12th century, however, the system began to collapse. The increasing power and influence of great lords led them to press for hereditary ownership of the land, as the feudal nobility had already done in Western Europe. In the struggle for succession between the sons of Béla III, whole counties were given as hereditary possessions to land-hungry barons who dominated the highest offices in the realm. Under King Andrew II, the permanent granting of royal and county estates to nobles reached unprecedented proportions. "The generosity of royal majesty has no limits," Andrew boasted. As a result of his extravagance and military campaigns, he soon exhausted the wealth of the royal properties and was forced to levy new taxes. The king's financial mismanagement and his land grants gave rise to general discontent. Feeling threatened by the barons, the lesser nobility organized themselves into a nationwide movement in defense of their interests. In 1222, Andrew was compelled to issue a charter known as the Golden Bull, which guaranteed the rights of all the nobility, exempting them from taxation and arbitrary arrest. Moreover, the document recognized the right of armed resistance if the monarch failed to honor its provisions. Like the Magna Carta 7 years earlier, the Golden Bull came to be regarded as the cornerstone of noble privileges and marked the beginning of a long constitutional tradition. The social tensions that led to the signing of the Golden Bull continued under the reign of Béla IV, who followed his father to the throne in 1235. Béla's efforts to restore royal authority met with determined resistance from the powerful lords. Internal rivalry was soon thrust into the background by a new enemy, the Mongol Empire, which was expanding towards the west. Word of this threat reached the king from a Hungarian Dominican monk named Julianus, who had set out to find the ancient homeland of the Magyars. After an epic journey, he succeeded in finding the eastern Hungarians on the banks of the Volga, where they had remained over the centuries. Before they could be invited to join their kinsmen in the west, they disappeared in the Mongol flood, which was soon to engulf the Russian principalities. In the spring of 1241, Mongol armies descended on Hungary from 3 directions. From the north came hordes that had ravaged Poland and Silesia. Another army advanced from the direction of Transylvania. The main force, under the command of Khan Batu, broke into the country through the Veretska Pass, used by Árpád's horsemen many years before. Unable to obtain outside help, Béla attempted to halt Batu's hordes on the plain of Mohi. Fighting in the manner of Western knights, the Hungarian army was annihilated by the same nomad tactics employed by the Magyars of old. Fleeing the battlefield, the king managed to elude his Mongol pursuers, finally taking refuge on an island in the Adriatic. Crossing the frozen Danube in 1242, the Mongols ravaged the western territories of Hungary, leaving the country completely devastated. Hungary was saved from total destruction only by the death of the great Khan in faraway Karakorum. Batu's hordes unexpectedly withdrew to the steppes of Central Asia, sparing Western Europe. Forever after, the Mongol invasion remained in the collective memory of the Hungarian people. God save our country, which is being strangled by the Tartars, so that happiness can once again come to Hungarian soil. Displaying great determination, Béla set about rebuilding his shattered kingdom. Since only a few castles and walled towns were able to withstand the Mongol attack, the king was faced with the need to organize a new defensive system. Recognizing that the country could be rebuilt only with the help of the barons, Béla granted them new lands and a free hand on their estates. The old county forts of earth and wood, once the bastion of royal power, were now replaced by the stone castles of feudal lords who maintained their own private armies. To repopulate his realm, the king invited colonists from neighboring countries. The forests of the north and eastern highlands were cleared by Western Slavic and Ruthenian settlers, while increasing numbers of Romanian shepherds were drawn to the alpine fields of southern Transylvania. Cumans, driven from the steppes by the Mongols, were allowed to live on the Great Plain between the Danube and Tisa rivers. During the 12th and 13th centuries, German colonists, known as Saxons, had settled in compact blocks under the Tatra Mountains and in the borderlands of Transylvania. Attracted by extensive privileges, a continued influx of artisans, miners, and merchants gave new impetus to the urbanization of the country. After the Mongol invasion, self-governing towns organized under German law were established all over Hungary on the basis of royal charters. Gothic town halls testify to the major role played by German burghers in urban life. Among the many towns founded during the reign of Béla IV was the new royal capital of Buda, constructed on a steep hill overlooking the right bank of the Danube. A royal palace was erected on the southern slope of the hill, while the houses of the town burghers were located on the northern slope. The multi-ethnic communities enclosed within the walls of Buda's Castle Hill are recalled by the German burghers' parish church, dedicated to the Virgin Mary, the Mary Magdalene Church of the Hungarian burghers, and the two synagogues which served a sizable Jewish population. Jews had first come to Hungary at the end of the 11th century to escape persecution in Western Europe. They were granted royal protection by Béla IV and played an increasingly important role in the city. The only original landmark of this era are the ruins of a Dominican convent where Béla's saintly daughter Margaret lived out her short life. The island in the Danube where the convent was built now bears her name. The last years of Béla's reign were marked by growing feudal anarchy. With the death of the last great Árpád king in 1270, power passed into the hands of the barons. In 1301, the sacred Árpád dynasty, which had given kings to Hungary, died out, bringing to a close a 400-year chapter in the nation's history. The Árpád era had witnessed the establishment of a permanent state in the Carpathian Basin. No other nomadic people before the Hungarians had ever succeeded in retaining their language and national identity among the settled nations of Europe. The development of an independent Hungarian kingdom was in many respects similar to the neighboring monarchies of Poland and Bohemia. Making rapid progress in catching up with the most advanced countries, Hungary became an integral part of medieval Latin Christendom.